The
All right,
morning
recruit,
sun beat
following with
down
the rest of the
mercilessly
arrivals.
on the dusty
Wait a
road
moment.
leading to Fort
Clark,
Bragg's main gates.
I see you brought your
Inside the
service record
military
with you.
transport bus, 23 recruits sat in varying states of nervous anticipation, their faces reflecting everything from excitement to sheer terror. Some whispered to each other, forming quick bonds over shared anxiety. Others sat alone, headphones in, trying to calm their racing hearts with music. In the back row, pressed against the window, sat Maya Chen. She didn't look like the others. At 28, she was nearly a decade older than most of the fresh-faced kids surrounding her. While they fidgeted and checked their phones for the 100th time, Maya sat perfectly still, her hands resting calmly on the duffel bag in her lap. Her dark eyes stared out at the passing pine trees, but she wasn't really seeing them. She was somewhere else entirely, a dusty compound in Kandahar, the acrid smell of smoke in her nostrils, the weight of a rifle in her hands. "First time?" asked the kid next to her, a baby-faced recruit who couldn't have been more than 19. Maya blinked, pulling herself back to the present. "Something like that," she replied with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The bus lurched to a stop at the security checkpoint. Guards in crisp uniforms boarded, checking IDs with practiced efficiency. When one reached Maya, he glanced at her paperwork and raised an eyebrow. "Administrative transfer," he said, not bothering to hide his smirk. "You're gonna have a rough time, ma'am. This ain't no desk job." "I'm aware," Maya said quietly, her voice betraying nothing. The guard shrugged and moved on. Maya exhaled slowly, forcing her shoulders to relax. This was the response she'd expected, the response she needed. Nobody could know. Nobody could find out who she really was. The bus rolled through the gates and toward the reception building. As it came to a final stop, a drill sergeant boarded, his voice like gravel mixed with thunder. "Listen up. When you exit this bus, you will form up in 4 ranks outside. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not move unless ordered to. Welcome to Fort Bragg. Your easy life just ended." The recruits scrambled off the bus in a chaotic mess. Maya moved with them but maintained a measured pace, her movements economical and precise. On the asphalt under the blazing sun, they attempted to form ranks. The drill sergeant prowled among them like a predator, correcting positions, barking orders, testing their resolve. Maya kept her head down and her mouth shut. She'd been through this before, many times actually, but never like this. Never as someone pretending to be less than she was. The intake process was designed to be humiliating and overwhelming. Recruits were herded from station to station, filling out paperwork, receiving equipment, getting medical checks. At each stop, they were treated like they knew nothing, because most of them didn't. At the personnel desk, a board sergeant reviewed Maya's file without really looking at it. "Chen Maya, age 28, he looked up, surprised. "You're a bit old for this, aren't you?" "Yes, Sergeant. Says here you're transferring from administrative duty at Fort Hood. What made you want to come here and play soldier?" Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Wanted a change, Sergeant." "Well, you're gonna get one." He stamped her papers and waved her through. "Good luck, desk jockey. You're gonna need it." Maya picked up her packet and moved to the next station. Around her, younger recruits were already showing signs of stress. One girl was crying quietly in line. A muscular guy who probably thought he was tough was arguing with a sergeant about his haircut requirements. Maya observed it all with the detached awareness of someone who had seen much worse. By the time they reached the barracks, it was late afternoon. The building was stark and utilitarian, rows of metal bunk beds, thin mattresses, and footlockers. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with decades of sweat hung in the air. Maya chose a bunk in the corner, away from the main flow of traffic. As the other recruits chattered nervously, unpacking their civilian belongings and taking photos to send home, Maya worked in silence. She moved with practiced efficiency, placing items in her footlocker with precise organization. Then she reached the bottom of her duffel bag. Wrapped carefully in a protective garment bag was her dress uniform. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she pulled it out. The dark blue fabric was immaculate, pressed to perfection, but it was the chest of the uniform that made her breath catch. Medals, rows of them. The silver star gleamed even in the dim barracks light, the nation's third highest military decoration for valor in combat. Next to it, the bronze star with its distinctive V device for valor. The Purple Heart, awarded for wounds received in action. Campaign ribbons telling a story of deployments to the world's most dangerous places. Maya's fingers traced the silver star slowly. She could still remember the day she earned it. The ambush, the screaming, the blood. Her friend Sarah dying in her arms while Maya held off an entire enemy squad single-handedly, calling for backup that seemed like it would never come. "Hey, what's that?" Maya's head snapped up. The baby-faced recruit from the bus was standing nearby, curiosity in his eyes. In one smooth motion, Maya folded the uniform and placed it at the bottom of her footlocker, covering it with civilian clothes. "Nothing," she said firmly, "just an old uniform." The recruit shrugged and walked away. Maya closed the footlocker, the click of the lock echoing with finality. She sat on her bunk, staring at the closed container. Inside that locker was everything she used to be, the decorated war hero, the soldier everyone looked up to, the woman who had seen and done things that would haunt her forever. Out here, she was nobody, just another recruit trying to make it through training. And that's exactly how she wanted it. As lights out was called and the barracks fell into darkness, Maya lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Could she really hide who she was? Could she bury her past deep enough that no one would find it? She had to try, because being that person again, the hero, the leader, the one everyone depended on, that was a weight she simply couldn't carry anymore. In the darkness, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Colonel James Harrison woke at 500 hours, just as he had every morning for the past 30 years. His routine never changed. 50 push-ups, a 5-mile run, a cold shower, and 2 cups of black coffee strong enough to strip paint. By 6:30, he was in his office, reviewing the files of the newest batch of recruits who would begin training that day. He'd seen thousands of them over his career. Young men and women who thought they knew what service meant, who thought boot camp movies had prepared them for reality. Most would make it through. Some would quit. A rare few would become truly exceptional soldiers. Harrison had developed an almost supernatural ability to predict which was which within the first few minutes of meeting them. At 800 sharp, he walked onto the parade ground where the new recruits had been assembled. The morning sun cast long shadows across the asphalt. 23 recruits stood in ragged formation, trying their best to look military. Most of them were failing. Harrison's boots clicked against the pavement as he began his inspection. This was psychological warfare, and he was a master of it. He walked slowly down the first rank, his eyes missing nothing. A recruit with his chin too high. Another whose uniform was already wrinkled. A kid whose hands were shaking visibly. "You nervous, recruit?" Harrison barked at the trembling young man. "And no, sir." "That's Colonel, not sir, and you're lying to me. We don't tolerate liars here." Harrison moved on, leaving the recruit sweating bullets. He continued down the line, barely glancing at most. Then he reached the third rank, fourth position, and something made him stop dead in his tracks. The woman standing at attention was older than the others, late 20s maybe, but that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the way she stood. Most recruits held themselves with either too much tension or too little, their military bearing forced and artificial. This woman's posture was different. It was natural, practiced. The stance of someone who'd spent years in uniform, not someone playing at being a soldier. Harrison stepped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to be uncomfortable. He studied her face. Dark eyes stared straight ahead with perfect discipline, but there was something in them, a depth, a weariness that didn't belong on a basic recruit. A thin scar traced above her left eyebrow, the kind you get from shrapnel or flying debris, not from a car accident or a childhood mishap. Name, Harrison commanded. Chen Maya, Colonel. Her voice was steady, controlled, not the voice of someone intimidated by authority. Harrison's combat instincts, honed through 3 wars and countless firefights, were screaming at him that something was off about this woman. "Where'd you serve, recruit?" he asked, his voice deliberately sharp. There was the briefest pause, maybe half a second, before she answered. "Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, Helmand Province." The recruits around her shifted uncomfortably. Even the greenest among them had heard of those places. Kandahar and Helmand weren't safe re-echelon postings. They were the deadliest regions in Afghanistan, where IEDs turned roads into death traps and Taliban fighters knew every cave and shadow. Harrison's eyes narrowed. Doing what? Administrative support, Colonel. It was the right answer according to her file, but everything about the way she carried herself screamed combat veteran, not desk jockey. Harrison had spent enough time in war zones to know the difference. You could see it in the eyes, that 1,000-yard stare that came from seeing too much. You could see it in how they held themselves, always alert, always aware of their surroundings. This woman had it in spades. Administrative support in Helmand Province, Harrison repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. That must have been interesting. Yes, Colonel. She wasn't going to give him anything. Harrison respected that, even as it frustrated him. He held her gaze for another long moment, trying to read what lay beneath that carefully controlled exterior. Then he moved on, continuing down the line. But his mind wasn't on the other recruits anymore. It was on Chen. Something about her didn't add up, and Colonel James Harrison had survived 3 decades in the military by paying attention to things that didn't add up. After the inspection, Harrison returned to his office and pulled up Chen's basic file on his computer. It was sparse, surprisingly sparse for someone who'd served overseas. Transfer from Fort Hood, administrative specialist, no combat awards listed, no major deployments noted beyond the station assignments. It all looked perfectly ordinary. Too ordinary. Harrison leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers on the desk. In his experience, when something looked too clean, too simple, it usually meant someone had deliberately made it that way. He glanced at the clock. 8:45 hours. The recruits would be starting their first day of actual training, physical conditioning, basic drill and ceremony, initial combat instruction. Harrison made a mental note to observe the afternoon session. He wanted to see Chen in action, see if his instincts were right. His phone buzzed. It was Lieutenant Barnes, one of his training officers. "Colonel, just wanted to give you a heads up. That older recruit, Chen, she's different. Ran the morning PT course like it was a casual jog. Didn't even break a sweat on the obstacle course. Some of the drill sergeants are already noticing." Harrison smiled grimly. "Keep an eye on her, Lieutenant. I want to know everything she does." "Yes, sir. You think she's going to be a problem?" Harrison considered the question. Problem wasn't the right word. Mystery was more accurate. "Let's just say I don't think we're getting the whole story. Report back to me this evening." After hanging up, Harrison stood and walked to his window, which overlooked the training grounds. In the distance, he could see the recruits doing formation drills. Even from here, he could pick out Chen, her movements precise, her spacing perfect, while those around her stumbled through the basics. She was hiding something, something significant. Colonel Harrison had built his reputation on being thorough, on never accepting things at face value. Whatever Chen's secret was, he would discover it. Not because he wanted to cause her trouble, but because soldiers under his command didn't keep secrets. Secrets got people killed. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. Personnel records, deep archive section. "This is Colonel Harrison. I need a full military record pulled, including any classified or sealed information. Authorization code Alpha 79er Delta." He paused. The name is Chen, Maya, Staff Sergeant. The clerk on the other end hesitated. Sir, a request like that requires justification and the justification is that I'm responsible for every soldier in this training program, and I need to know who I'm training. How long? For a deep pull with classified access. 48 hours minimum, sir. Harrison glanced out the window again at the distant figure of Maya Chen. Make it 24. This is priority. He hung up and returned to his desk. Whatever Chen was hiding, he'd know soon enough. In the meantime, he would watch her, study her, see what she revealed when she thought no one was paying attention. Because in Harrison's experience, everyone revealed their true nature eventually. It was just a matter of applying the right pressure and waiting for the cracks to show. And Maya Chen, whoever she really was, would be no exception. The first week of training was designed to break people. That was the point. Colonel Harrison believed that you discovered who someone truly was only when you pushed them past their limits, stripped away their pretenses, and forced them to confront their own weaknesses. Day 1 began at 4:30 hours with a wake-up call that was more scream than speech. Drill Sergeant Williams stormed through the barracks, banging a metal trash can lid like a demented percussionist. Get up, get up, get up. You have 4 minutes to be in formation outside in full PT gear. Move. Chaos erupted. Recruits tumbled from bunks, frantically pulling on clothes, tying shoes with shaking fingers. Private Jennings, the baby-faced kid from the bus, couldn't find his left shoe and was nearly crying with panic. Maya was already up, dressed, and standing by her bunk at parade rest. She'd woken at 4:15, as she had every morning for the past 8 years. Some habits were impossible to break. The morning run was 5 miles through the North Carolina pine forests. The pace was punishing. By mile 2, half the recruits were struggling. By mile 3, several were vomiting on the side of the trail. Drill Sergeant Williams showed no mercy, his voice a constant barrage of insults and motivation. Maya ran in the middle of the pack, deliberately holding back. Her breathing was steady, controlled. She could run twice this distance without breaking a sweat, had done it many times in full combat gear in the Afghan mountains, but she forced herself to look appropriately challenged. She let her breathing get slightly labored, made sure she looked tired. But Lieutenant Barnes, running alongside the formation, was watching her carefully. He noticed that while other recruits' form was falling apart, shoulders hunching, strides shortening, Chen's remained textbook perfect. Her foot strikes were precise. Her posture never wavered. The afternoon brought the obstacle course. A brutal series of walls to climb, ropes to traverse, trenches to crawl through, and barriers to overcome. It was designed to test strength, endurance, and mental toughness. Private Jennings approached the 12-foot wall and froze. His arms trembled as he tried to pull himself up, but fear locked his muscles. He dropped back down, breathing hard, panic clear in his eyes. "I can't do it," he muttered. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Maya appeared beside him, her voice calm and authoritative. "Look at me, Jennings, look at me." His eyes met hers, and something in her gaze steadied him. "You're thinking about the whole wall. Don't. Just think about getting your hands on top. That's all. Hands on top. Can you do that?" Jennings nodded slowly. "Good, now jump and grab, I'll spot you." This time, with Maya's quiet encouragement, Jennings made it over. When he dropped to the other side, his face was flushed with triumph. Maya simply nodded and moved on, but Lieutenant Barnes had seen the whole interaction. The way she talked the kid down wasn't something you learned in a classroom. That was the voice of someone who'd done it before, probably under much worse circumstances than a training exercise. The breaking point came on day 4 during the night land navigation exercise. The recruits were dropped in pairs in the dark woods with nothing but a compass, a map, and a grid coordinate to find. The temperature had dropped to near freezing, and a light rain made everything miserable. Private Jennings was paired with Private Rodriguez, a cocky former high school football star who thought he knew everything. Within an hour, they were completely lost. Rodriguez insisted they were going the right way. Jennings wasn't sure, but he was too intimidated to argue. After 2 hours of walking in circles, both were on the verge of panic. That's when Rodriguez saw a light through the trees, another recruit's flashlight. "There, we'll just follow them," Rodriguez said. "That's cheating," Jennings protested weakly. "It's being smart, come on." But as they approached, they realized it wasn't another recruit. It was Maya, standing at a checkpoint marker studying her map. She looked up as they crashed through the underbrush. "Lost?" she asked quietly. Rodriguez's pride kicked in. "No, we're fine, we're just—" "You're lost," Maya interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. "And you're 2 clicks off course, heading away from your objective." She pulled out her map and knelt down, shielding her flashlight. "Come here, both of you." For the next 10 minutes, Maya taught them properly how to read terrain features, how to use a compass in conjunction with a map, how to pace count distance. Her instruction was clear, patient, and incredibly professional. This wasn't someone who'd learned this from a manual. This was someone who'd used these skills in situations where mistakes meant death. "You're heading for grid coordinate 845,322, right?" Maya asked. Jennings checked his card. "Yes." Maya pointed. "It's that direction, exactly 1,500 meters. You'll cross a small creek at about 800 meters. That's your halfway checkpoint. Stay on that bearing and you'll find it." "How do you know all this?" Rodriguez asked, his cockiness replaced by genuine curiosity. Maya stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "Lucky guess. Now get moving, you're already behind time." She watched them disappear into the darkness, then checked her own compass and headed toward her own objective, in the opposite direction. What she didn't see was Lieutenant Barnes, standing in the shadows 50 meters away, recording everything on his night vision observation device. The next morning, Barnes knocked on Colonel Harrison's office door. "Come in," Harrison called. Barnes entered carrying a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." He pulled up the night vision footage and hit play. Harrison watched in silence as Maya conducted what amounted to a professional land navigation class in the middle of a training exercise. "That's not how an administrative clerk teaches navigation," Barnes said quietly. "That's how a combat veteran who's done it 100 times teaches it." Harrison replayed the video, studying Maya's movements, her confidence, the way she handled the situation. "What else have you observed?" Barnes pulled up his notes. "She's never first in anything, but her technique is always perfect. During combat drills, she instinctively takes cover in angles that suggest advanced tactical training. When weapons were introduced yesterday, she field-stripped an M4 in 23 seconds without looking at it. The drill sergeant said he's never seen a recruit do it that fast." "But she's holding back," Harrison observed. "Deliberately, she's trying very hard to look average." Barnes paused. "Sir, I pulled her publicly available service record. It's thin, too thin. Whatever she really did in Afghanistan, it's not in the standard files." Harrison nodded slowly. "I've got a deep records request pending. Should have the results by tomorrow morning." He closed the tablet and handed it back. "In the meantime, keep watching. I want to know every time she slips, every time the real Maya Chen shows through the cracks." "You think she's going to be a problem, sir?" Harrison thought about the video, about the way Maya had helped those lost recruits when she could have just passed by. "No, Lieutenant. I think she's going to be an asset, once we figure out why she's hiding." That night Maya lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She knew she'd made mistakes, let too much of her real training show through, but she couldn't help it. When she saw soldiers struggling, even recruits, her instincts took over. The need to teach, to help, to ensure they survived was too deeply ingrained. She touched the scar above her eyebrow, remembering how she'd gotten it. An IED explosion that had killed 2 members of her team. She'd been the one to pull the survivors out while under enemy fire. That was the problem with being a soldier like her. You couldn't just turn it off. The skills, the instincts, the need to protect, they were part of who she was now, woven into her DNA. Maybe Colonel Harrison was right during that inspection. Maybe you couldn't hide from who you truly were. But she had to try, because the alternative, being that person again, carrying that weight, was something she simply couldn't face. Not yet. Colonel Harrison couldn't sleep. It was 200 hours, and he'd been tossing and turning for 3 hours, his mind refusing to quiet. Finally, he gave up, threw on his uniform, and headed to his office. The base was eerily quiet at this hour, just the distant sound of guards making their rounds and the occasional vehicle passing on the main road. His coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the small office with the rich aroma of dark roast. Harrison sat at his desk and stared at his computer screen. The encrypted email had arrived at 23:47 hours. He'd seen the notification on his phone but had waited until now to open it. His hand hovered over the mouse for a moment. Something told him that once he read what was in Maya Chen's full military record, there would be no going back. Knowledge carried responsibility, and Harrison took his responsibilities seriously. He clicked. The file was massive, heavily redacted in places, with large sections blacked out or marked classified top secret SCI. But what remained was enough to make Harrison set down his coffee cup with a trembling hand. "My God," he whispered. "Chien Maya L. Rank Staff Sergeant E6. MOS. 35M Human Intelligence Collector/Cultural Support Team. Years of service, 8. Harrison scrolled through the service record. Unlike the sanitized version he'd seen before, this one told a very different story. Decorations and awards. Silver Star, awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States. Citation partially redacted. Details available. SSG Chen's convoy was ambushed by a numerically superior enemy force in Kandahar province. After the convoy commander was killed in the initial attack, Chen assumed command and organized a defensive position. Despite being wounded by shrapnel, she directed fire, called for close air support, and single-handedly held off an enemy assault for 43 minutes while evacuating wounded soldiers. Her actions resulted in the survival of 11 soldiers who would have otherwise been killed or captured. Harrison read the citation twice, 43 minutes, alone, wounded, against an enemy force estimated at 30 to 40 fighters. He'd seen combat himself, knew what that kind of situation demanded. This wasn't just bravery, it was something beyond. He continued reading. Bronze Star with Valor Device. For heroic achievement in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. SSG Chen volunteered for a high-risk mission to recover 2 missing soldiers believed to be held in a hostile compound. Despite intelligence suggesting the location was heavily defended and potentially rigged with explosives, Chen entered the structure and successfully located and evacuated both soldiers while under direct enemy fire. Purple Heart, for wounds received in action. Shrapnel wounds to face, shoulder, and left arm from an improvised explosive device. Returned to duty after 3 weeks of recovery. Combat Action Badge. Afghanistan Campaign Medal with 4 campaign stars. NATO Medal. Harrison leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. But it was the next section that truly shocked him. Special Assignment History. Cultural Support Team, CSD, attached to 3rd Special Forces Group. Duration 18 months. Classification, secret. Harrison knew about the cultural support teams. They were female soldiers specially selected and trained to work alongside special forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, conducting missions that male soldiers couldn't due to cultural restrictions. These women went on raids, gathered intelligence from local women, and operated in some of the most dangerous situations imaginable. The selection process was brutal. Most who applied didn't make it through. And Maya Chen had done it for 18 months. The operation summaries were heavily redacted, but Harrison could read between the lines. Operation redacted, village assessment and intelligence gathering in hostile territory. Team came under attack. Chen provided security and fire support, enabling mission completion. Operation redacted, compound raid. Chen entered structure to locate high-value targets' family members. Located and secured redacted individuals, providing critical intelligence that led to redacted. Operation redacted, rescue operation. 2 American contractors held hostage. Chen volunteered to enter the structure first due to presence of female hostages. Successfully redacted. There were dozens more entries, each one representing a mission that most soldiers would never experience in their entire careers. This woman had lived a lifetime of combat in just a few years. Harrison found a psychological evaluation from 6 months ago, conducted after her last deployment. SSG Chen exhibits classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and survivor's guilt. She has repeatedly expressed feelings of unworthiness regarding her decorations, stating that others who did not survive were more deserving. She demonstrates high levels of functional capability but shows signs of emotional exhaustion and moral injury. Recommendation: non-combat assignment with access to mental health resources. Close monitoring advised. Suddenly everything made sense. The transfer to a training program, the hiding of her identity, the deliberate attempt to be average. Maya Chen wasn't running from glory, she was running from pain. Harrison found a personal statement she'd submitted with her transfer request. It was brief. I request reassignment to a training role where I can contribute to preparing the next generation of soldiers. After 8 years of combat operations, I believe I can best serve by passing on lessons learned. I do not wish my previous decorations or assignments to be a factor in my placement or treatment. I want to serve quietly and effectively. At the bottom, someone, probably a personnel officer, had noted, unusual request from highly decorated soldier, approved conditionally. Watch for signs of distress. Harrison sat in silence for a long time, staring at Maya Chen's service photo. She wore her dress uniform in the picture, the silver star prominent on her chest. Her eyes looked directly at the camera with that same steady gaze he'd seen during inspection. But now he understood what he was seeing, not arrogance or mystery, but someone carrying a weight that would crush most people. He thought about his own years of service, his own decorations, his own nights when the memories wouldn't let him sleep. He understood her better than she probably realized. The sun was beginning to rise outside his window, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In a few hours, the recruits would be up for another day of training. Maya would be there, still hiding, still trying to be invisible. But Harrison had a decision to make. He could confront her privately, let her continue her charade. He could reassign her to an instructor position officially, forcing her to acknowledge her experience. Or he could wait, watch, and see how this played out. He looked at the training schedule for the week. Day 7 included live fire exercises in the kill house, the most dangerous training they conducted. Real bullets, real scenarios, real risks. Harrison made his decision. He would wait, but he would watch very carefully, because soldiers like Maya Chen didn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, something would happen that would force her to reveal who she really was. He just hoped that, when that moment came, she would be ready to face it. Harrison closed the file, encrypted it, and locked it in his safe. Then he poured himself another cup of coffee and watched the sunrise, thinking about the remarkable woman who was currently sleeping in the barracks, trying so hard to be ordinary. "You can't hide forever, Sergeant Chen," he said quietly to the empty office. "And maybe you shouldn't." Day 7, the kill house. Maya had been dreading this moment since she arrived at Fort Bragg. The kill house was a concrete structure designed to simulate urban combat: tight corners, narrow hallways, multiple rooms, and most importantly, live ammunition. This wasn't paintball or simulation rounds. These were real bullets, real flashbangs, real danger. The recruits gathered outside the facility at 900 hours, their nervous energy palpable. Even the cocky ones like Rodriguez looked pale. Drill Sergeant Williams briefed them with unusual seriousness. "Listen up. What you're about to do is the most dangerous training exercise in this program. People have died in kill houses. People have been seriously injured. You will follow every instruction exactly as given. You will maintain muzzle discipline at all times. You will communicate constantly with your team. Is that understood?" "Yes, Drill Sergeant." Maya stood in the back of the formation, her heart pounding. She'd done this hundreds of times in real combat situations, clearing buildings in Kandahar, rescuing hostages in Helmand, executing raids with special forces. But that was the problem. Her body remembered. Her muscles knew what to do. And in a high-stress situation, training took over. She couldn't afford to let that happen. Colonel Harrison watched from the observation deck above the kill house, Lieutenant Barnes beside him. The room was equipped with cameras and bulletproof glass, allowing instructors to monitor every angle of the exercise. "First team, you're up," Williams called. Chen, Jennings, Rodriguez, and Martinez. Scenario: hostage rescue. 2 role players inside acting as hostiles, 1 acting as a hostage. You have 5 minutes to clear the structure and secure the hostage. Weapons hot in 3, 2, 1, go. The 4 recruits entered the kill house, weapons raised. Maya deliberately positioned herself in the back, letting Rodriguez take point. Her palms were sweating inside her gloves. She could smell the concrete dust, the gun oil, the same smells that always preceded violence. They moved through the first room clear, second room clear. Then they reached the main hallway. At the end, a door stood partially open. Rodriguez signaled and moved forward. But he missed something Maya's experienced eyes caught immediately: a tripwire, almost invisible in the dim light, positioned at ankle height. "Stop," Maya hissed. But it was too late. Rodriguez's boot caught the wire. What happened next occurred in horrible slow motion. The tripwire was connected to a training device that should have triggered a loud noise, a simulated explosion to teach recruits about booby traps. But something malfunctioned. Instead of just noise, the device sparked and ignited, setting off a flashbang that had been improperly stored nearby. The explosion was deafening. Blinding white light filled the hallway. The concussion wave slammed into the recruits, knocking Jennings to the ground. Rodriguez screamed, clutching his ears. Smoke began pouring from the device, thick and acrid, filling the narrow space. In the observation room, Harrison shot to his feet. "Abort! Abort the exercise!" But the role players inside didn't hear the command. One of them, a training sergeant named Mitchell, was following his script. He emerged from the room at the end of the hall, weapon raised, shouting, "Get down! Get down!" It was meant to be part of the scenario. But in the chaos, the smoke, the ringing ears, the confusion, it became real. Martinez panicked. He raised his weapon, his finger moving toward the trigger, safety already off. He was about to fire live rounds at a fellow soldier. Maya moved. 8 years of combat experience took over. Her body acted on pure instinct, faster than thought. She grabbed Martinez's weapon, yanking it upward just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the ceiling, sending concrete dust raining down. In the same motion, Maya stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with absolute authority. "Cease fire, Martinez, safety on now." Rodriguez grabbed Jennings and moved to the entry point. "Mitchell, abort the scenario, we have a real emergency." She moved like water, fast and precise. While the others were still processing what had happened, Maya had already assessed the situation. Jennings was down but conscious, likely concussion from the blast. The smoke was getting thicker, potential fire hazard. Martinez was in shock, frozen. Rodriguez was disoriented. Maya grabbed Jennings under the arms and hauled him up. "Rodriguez, help me. We need to evacuate now." Her commands weren't suggestions. They were orders delivered with the voice of someone who'd led soldiers through actual combat. Rodriguez responded instinctively, taking Jennings' other arm. Maya directed them toward the exit, her tactical awareness operating on full capacity. "Martinez on me, stay close, watch your spacing." She was running the evacuation like a combat extraction, her brain automatically processing threats, exits, and the condition of her team. In 90 seconds, she'd gotten everyone out of the kill house. Once outside, she immediately began triaging injuries. "Jennings, can you hear me? How many fingers?" She checked his pupils, felt for signs of concussion. "Rodriguez, sit down before you fall down. Deep breaths. Martinez, you're okay, just stay with me." Only when the medics arrived did Maya step back, and that's when she realized what she'd done. Everyone was staring at her. The other recruits, the drill sergeants, the medical personnel, all of them looking at her with a mixture of shock and awe. That hadn't been a recruit responding to an emergency. That had been a seasoned combat veteran taking command of a crisis situation with absolute professional competence. Drill Sergeant Williams approached her slowly, his expression unreadable. "Chen, how did you?" Maya's hands started shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off and reality was crashing down. She'd exposed herself completely. There was no hiding now, no pretending to be just another recruit. From the observation deck, Colonel Harrison's voice came over the loudspeaker, quiet but firm. "Staff Sergeant Chen, my office, immediately." The use of her actual rank, not recruit, not trainee, but staff sergeant, told her everything. He knew, he'd always known, and now everyone else would know too. Maya looked down at her hands, still trembling from adrenaline and the rush of combat instincts she'd tried so hard to suppress. Around her, medics were treating Jennings and the others. No one had been seriously hurt, thanks to her intervention. But her cover was blown. Private Jennings looked up at her from where the medics were examining him. "You saved us," he said quietly. "That wasn't luck. You knew exactly what to do." Maya couldn't answer. She just nodded once, then turned and walked toward the administrative building where Colonel Harrison was waiting. Each step felt heavier than the last. She was walking toward the confrontation she'd been avoiding since the day she arrived. Behind her, she heard Rodriguez talking to another recruit. "Did you see how she moved? That was like special forces or something." If only he knew how close to the truth he was. Maya climbed the stairs to Harrison's office, her heart pounding harder than it had during the crisis in the kill house. She could handle combat. She could handle danger. But facing the truth about herself, that was the battle she'd been losing all along. She reached Harrison's door and knocked twice. "Come in, Sergeant." Maya took a deep breath and opened the door, knowing that everything was about to change. Maya stepped into Colonel Harrison's office and immediately saw it, her dress uniform laid out on his desk like evidence at a trial. The medals gleamed under the fluorescent lights, each one a memory she tried to bury. The silver star caught the light, seeming to burn brighter than the rest. "Close the door, Sergeant," Harrison said quietly. She did, then stood at attention, eyes forward, jaw tight. Her hands were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline, but she forced them still. Harrison didn't speak for a long moment. He simply studied her, his experienced eyes seeing past the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself. Finally, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Maya." The use of her first name surprised her. It wasn't a command from a superior officer. It was an invitation from one soldier to another. Slowly, she sat, her posture rigid. Harrison picked up the silver star, turning it over in his hands. Want to tell me why a recipient of the nation's third highest military honor is pretending to be a basic recruit? Maya's throat tightened. She'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her head, but now that it was happening, the words wouldn't come. I read your full record, Harrison continued, his voice gentle but firm. The ambush in Kandahar, the hostage rescue, 18 months with a cultural support team attached to special forces, 43 minutes holding off an enemy force alone while wounded. He set the medal down carefully. That's not the record of someone running away. That's the record of a hero. Don't call me that, Maya said sharply, the words escaping before she could stop them. She looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. Please, don't call me that. Harrison leaned back in his chair, waiting. He'd interrogated enough people to know that silence was often the best way to get someone to talk. Maya's composure began to crack. Sarah Martinez, she said quietly. She was my best friend. We went through training together, deployed together. She was the best soldier I ever knew, braver than me, smarter than me, better than me in every way that mattered. Her voice broke slightly. The day I earned that silver star, Sarah was there. We were in the same convoy when the ambush happened. She was in the lead vehicle. The IED that killed our convoy commander, it should have been her vehicle. She always drove lead. But that day, she'd switched positions with him because he was nursing a headache. Maya's hands clenched into fists. When the shooting started, she tried to get to the wounded. She made it to 3 of them before. She stopped, swallowing hard. Before a sniper put a round through her chest, I watched her fall. I watched her bleed out while I was pinned down, returning fire, unable to reach her. Tears were streaming down Maya's face now, but she didn't wipe them away. I held that position for 43 minutes. I called for air support. I evacuated the wounded. I did everything right, everything by the book, and I got a silver star for it. Her voice turned bitter. Sarah got a flag-folded triangle and a grave at Arlington. Harrison said nothing, just listened. The Bronze Star, Maya continued, the words pouring out now like a dam had broken. That was the hostage rescue everyone praised me for, but what the citation doesn't say is that I hesitated. For 3 seconds I hesitated at the door because I was afraid. Those 3 seconds meant that one of the hostages got shot before I could reach them. He survived, but he lost a kidney. 3 seconds of fear cost a man an organ. She looked down at her hands. Every medal on that uniform represents a moment when someone died, or got hurt, or suffered because I wasn't fast enough, smart enough, brave enough. They pin these pieces of metal on your chest and call you a hero, but all I see when I look at them is everyone I failed to save. Is that why you're here? Harrison asked gently, hiding from your past? I'm not hiding, Maya said, though they both knew it was a lie. I can't be that person anymore, the hero everyone expects, the soldier who never breaks. I was falling apart, Colonel. Every night I'd wake up screaming. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see Sarah falling, hear the sounds of people dying, smell the blood and smoke. She wiped her face roughly with her sleeve. I thought if I could start over, be anonymous, just teach what I know without the weight of those expectations. Maybe I could actually help people without the pressure of being perfect, without feeling like everyone who looks at me sees someone I know I'm not. Harrison stood and walked around the desk. He pulled up a chair and sat directly across from her, close enough that she couldn't avoid his gaze. You want to know what I see when I look at you? He asked. I see a woman who ran into a burning building in Helmand to save children she didn't know. I see someone who held off an entire enemy squad alone because she refused to let her friends die. I see a soldier who just saved 4 recruits from a disaster in that kill house without even thinking about herself. He picked up the silver star again. These medals don't represent your failures, Sergeant Chen. They represent moments when you made impossible choices under impossible circumstances. They represent times when you put others before yourself, when you did things that most people couldn't even imagine. But Sarah made her choice to be there just like you did, Harrison interrupted, his voice firm but compassionate. "You don't honor her memory by hiding from yours. You honor it by being the soldier she knew you were, the soldier who saves people, the soldier who leads." Maya shook her head. "I can't carry that weight anymore. I can't be responsible for." "You already are," Harrison said, gesturing toward the window overlooking the training grounds. "Those recruits out there, they know what you did today. Private Jennings is telling anyone who will listen that you saved his life. Rodriguez is calling you the most skilled soldier he's ever seen. You think you can go back to being invisible after that?" Maya sat in silence, the truth of his words settling over her like a heavy blanket. Harrison stood and walked to his desk. He picked up her dress uniform and held it out to her. "You have a choice to make, Sergeant Chen. You can keep running from who you are, or you can accept it, not as a burden but as a responsibility. These recruits need what you know. They need someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. They need a real warrior to teach them, not just drill by numbers." Maya stared at the uniform, at the medals that had haunted her for so long. "What if I fail them?" she whispered. "What if you don't?" Harrison countered. "What if you save them? What if the lessons you teach keep them alive when they face their own impossible moments?" He laid the uniform across her lap. "Tomorrow morning I'm calling a formation, and you're going to wear this, all of it, the medals, the rank, everything, and we're going to tell those recruits exactly who you are." Maya's breath caught. "Colonel, I don't." "That's an order, Sergeant," Harrison said, but his tone was kind. "You've been running long enough. It's time to stand and face what you've been hiding from, not for me, not for the army, for yourself." Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bunk in the dark barracks, her dress uniform laid out before her like a ghost from her past. The other recruits were asleep, their soft snores filling the space, but Maya's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. At 400 hours, she finally stood and began to dress. Her hands shook as she buttoned the dark blue jacket. The fabric felt foreign after weeks in combat fatigues. She'd forgotten how the uniform hugged her shoulders, how the collar felt against her neck. When she reached for the medals, she had to stop and take several deep breaths. The silver star went on first. Her fingers remembered the placement automatically, 1.5 inches above the left breast pocket, centered. The bronze star with its V device. The purple heart. The ribbons representing campaigns, service, and sacrifices that most people would never understand. When she was finished, she stood before the small mirror by her locker. The woman staring back at her was both familiar and strange. This was Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, decorated combat veteran, not the anonymous recruit she'd been pretending to be. "Holy," Private Rodriguez's voice came from behind her. He'd woken early and was staring at her in shock. "Chen, are those real?" Before Maya could answer, other recruits began to stir, drawn by Rodriguez's voice. One by one, they sat up and saw her standing there in her dress uniform, the medals gleaming in the early morning light filtering through the windows. Private Jennings approached slowly, his eyes wide. "The Silver Star," he whispered, reading the citations. "Bronze Star with Valor, you saved people, a lot of people." Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to explain, to deflect, to minimize what they were seeing. But Harrison's words from yesterday echoed in her mind. "You've been running long enough." "Yes," she said quietly, "I did." At 800 hours, the loudspeaker crackled to life across the entire base. "All personnel report to the main parade ground for mandatory formation. All personnel, main parade ground. Immediately." The recruits fell into formation, buzzing with speculation. Word had spread like wildfire about Maya's uniform, about the medals. Everyone knew something significant was about to happen. Maya stood in her usual position in the third rank, but now she stood out like a beacon. The dress blue uniform among all the camouflage fatigues, the medals catching the morning sunlight. Colonel Harrison stepped onto the platform, Lieutenant Barnes and Drill Sergeant Williams flanking him. The entire training battalion was assembled, over 200 recruits, instructors, and support staff. "At ease," Harrison commanded. His voice carried across the parade ground with absolute authority. "This morning I'm going to tell you a story. A story about courage, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be a soldier." The formation was silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. 3 weeks ago, a woman arrived at this training facility, Harrison continued. She signed in as a basic recruit transferring from administrative duty. She kept her head down, stayed quiet, and tried to blend in with everyone else. He paused. What none of you knew, what she didn't want any of you to know, was who she really was. Harrison's eyes found Maya in the formation. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, front and center. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. No more hiding, no more running. With precise steps, she marched forward, her training carrying her even as her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. She stopped 3 paces from Harrison and saluted sharply. "At ease, Sergeant," Harrison said. Then he turned to address the formation. "What you see on Staff Sergeant Chen's uniform represents 8 years of service in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. But these medals represent more than service. They represent moments of extraordinary courage." He began to read from a paper in his hand, her Silver Star citation. His voice was strong and clear, carrying across the silent parade ground. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States, Staff Sergeant Chen's convoy was ambushed by a numerically superior enemy force. After the convoy commander was killed, Sergeant Chen assumed command despite being wounded by shrapnel. She organized a defensive position and single-handedly held off an enemy assault for 43 minutes while directing the evacuation of 11 wounded soldiers." Maya stood rigid, tears beginning to stream down her face. She couldn't stop them. Each word Harrison spoke brought back the memories, the heat, the smoke, the screaming, Sarah's face as the life left her eyes. Harrison continued with the Bronze Star citation. "For heroic achievement in connection with military operations, Sergeant Chen volunteered for a high-risk mission to recover 2 soldiers held in a hostile compound. Despite intelligence suggesting heavy resistance and potential explosives, she entered the structure and successfully evacuated both soldiers while under direct enemy fire." The formation was completely still. Some of the recruits had tears in their own eyes. They were beginning to understand what they'd been witnessing these past weeks, not just a skilled soldier, but a genuine war hero who'd been hiding among them. When Harrison finished reading the citations, he turned back to Maya. "Sergeant Chen came here hopping to disappear, hopping to be just another recruit. She wanted to escape the weight of these medals, the burden of everyone's expectations." His voice softened. "But yesterday, in the kill house, when things went wrong, she couldn't help being who she truly is. She saved lives. Again." He stepped forward and, in a gesture that surprised everyone, removed the Silver Star from Maya's uniform. For a moment, Maya's heart stopped. Was he taking it away? But then Harrison held it up for everyone to see, the medal catching the sunlight like a star itself. "This medal represents the best of what we aspire to be," he said. "Courage under fire, leadership when it matters most, sacrifice for others." He looked at Maya, his eyes kind but firm. "And it belongs right here." He pinned the medal back onto her uniform, his movements careful and precise. Then he did something that military regulations didn't require but that his heart demanded. He snapped to attention and saluted her. A staff sergeant, a soldier who had earned his deepest respect. For 3 seconds, Maya could only stare at him in shock. Then her training kicked in and she returned the salute, crisp and sharp. Behind her, a sound started. It began with Private Jennings, a single pair of hands clapping. Then Rodriguez joined, then another recruit, and another. Within seconds, the entire formation was applauding. 200 soldiers, from fresh recruits to seasoned drill sergeants, all showing their respect and admiration. The sound rolled across the parade ground like thunder. Maya stood there, tears flowing freely now, her hands trembling at her sides. She'd spent months trying to escape this recognition, this attention. She'd believed that if no one knew who she was, she wouldn't have to carry the weight of their expectations. But standing here with these soldiers, her soldiers, showing their respect, something shifted inside her. This wasn't about her being perfect. It wasn't about living up to some impossible standard. It was about what Harrison had tried to tell her, accepting who she was, scars and all, and using that to help others. Private Jennings stepped forward from the formation, technically breaking protocol, but no one stopped him. He approached Maya, came to attention, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thank you, Sergeant, for yesterday, for saving my life, and for showing us what a real soldier looks like." Maya looked at this young man, barely 19, terrified and brave in equal measure, and saw in his eyes the same determination she'd once had, the same hope, the same desire to serve something bigger than himself. She found her voice, though it shook with emotion. "You're going to be a good soldier, Jennings, all of you are." She looked out at the formation, at all the faces watching her. "And I'm going to make sure you're ready for whatever comes." The applause continued, growing louder. Maya stood at attention, finally accepting what she'd been running from for so long. She was Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, Silver Star recipient, combat veteran, survivor. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly who she needed to be. 3 months later, the transformation was complete. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen stood at the front of a classroom, a tactical map of urban terrain spread across the wall behind her. 20 recruits sat at attention, notebooks open, hanging on her every word. This wasn't the anonymous woman who'd arrived on that transport bus. This was a confident instructor, sharing hard-won wisdom that couldn't be found in any manual. "Listen carefully," Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of experience. "When you're clearing a building in a hostile environment, the biggest threat isn't what you can see, it's what you assume. You assume that door is clear because you checked it. You assume your buddy is covering that angle because that's his job. You assume you have time because the intel said there were only 3 hostiles." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Assumptions get people killed. I've seen it happen. I've almost died because of it myself." The recruits were utterly focused. This wasn't theoretical. Maya spoke from a place of brutal truth, and they knew it. "In Kandahar, I assumed a building was clear because my team leader said so. I walked in without checking corners myself. There was a fighter hiding in a side room we'd missed. He could have killed me, but my friend Sarah," Maya's voice caught slightly, but she pushed through. "Sarah had double-checked behind me. She saved my life that day. 2 months later, she died in an ambush." The classroom was silent. Maya could see the impact of her words in their faces, the sudden understanding that this wasn't a game, that real lives hung in the balance. "The lesson isn't just about tactics," Maya continued. "It's about trust, thoroughness, and never taking anything for granted. Check your own corners, trust but verify, and always watch each other's backs." Private Jennings raised his hand. "Sergeant Chen, how do you keep going after losing people, after seeing what you've seen?" It was the question Maya had been avoiding for months. But now, standing here as an instructor rather than hiding as a recruit, she knew she had to answer honestly. "You don't get over it," she said quietly. "You learn to carry it. Every person I've lost, Sarah, Lieutenant Davis, Corporal Jackson, and others, they're with me every day. But I've learned something important. The best way to honor them isn't by hiding from the pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's by making sure their deaths meant something." She looked at each recruit in turn. "Every one of you represents a chance to save a life. If I can teach you something that keeps you alive when things go wrong, if I can prepare you for the impossible moments you'll face, then Sarah's death wasn't meaningless. Then all the pain, all the loss, it becomes part of something bigger." After class, Maya walked across the parade ground toward the administrative building. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, and the base was settling into its evening routine. She'd become a fixture here now, the instructor everyone wanted to train under, the veteran everyone respected. Colonel Harrison intercepted her halfway across the quad. "Sergeant Chen, walk with me." They fell into step together, two soldiers who'd formed an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding. "I watched your class today," Harrison said. "You're a natural teacher. Those recruits would follow you into hell if you asked them to." Maya smiled slightly. "Let's hope I never have to ask them to do that." "How are you doing, really?" It was the question he asked her once a week, ever since that day on the parade ground. At first, Maya had given him the automatic "fine, sir" response, but they'd moved past that. "Some days are harder than others," she admitted. "I still have nightmares, I still see Sarah's face, but I also see Jennings mastering room-clearing techniques. I see Rodriguez learning to control his panic under stress. I see Martinez becoming a leader." She paused. "It helps. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it meaning." They reached the steps of the admin building, but Harrison stopped before going inside. "I have something for you." He pulled a folder from under his arm and handed it to her. "Transfer orders, if you want them." Maya opened the folder, her heart suddenly racing. The orders would assign her to the Special Operations Training Group permanently, with a promotion to Sergeant First Class and the official title of Senior Combat Instructor. "You've earned this 10 times over," Harrison said. "The question is whether you want it. This path means staying visible. It means being the decorated veteran, the role model, the person everyone looks up to. No more hiding." Maya stared at the orders, remembering the woman who'd arrived here 3 months ago, broken, hiding, trying to disappear. That woman had believed her worth was measured by the people she'd failed to save. This woman understood something different. Her worth was measured by the people she could still help. "I'll take it," she said firmly. "No more hiding." Harrison smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "Good. You sign those and you'll be training the next generation of Special Forces candidates, the best of the best." That evening, Maya sat in her small office, a privilege that came with her instructor position, and pulled out a photograph she kept in her desk drawer. It showed her and Sarah in Afghanistan, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning despite the dust and danger surrounding them. "I think I'm finally understanding," Maya said to the photograph. "You didn't die so I could hide from life. You died doing what you believed in, protecting people, serving something bigger than yourself. And that's what I need to do too." She set the photo on her desk where she could see it every day, no longer hidden away like a shameful secret. Sarah's smile would remind her why she did this work, why it mattered. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Private Jennings stood in the doorway, looking nervous. "Sergeant Chen, sorry to bother you, but could I talk to you about something?" Maya gestured for him to enter. "Of course. What's on your mind, Jennings?" "I got my orders. I'm deploying to the Middle East in 2 months." He swallowed hard. "I'm scared, and I know I'm not supposed to admit that, but—" "Everyone's scared before their first deployment," Maya interrupted gently. "Anyone who says they're not is lying. Being scared doesn't make you weak, Jennings. It makes you smart. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you careful." She stood and walked around her desk to face him directly. "But here's what you need to know. I've spent the last 3 months teaching you everything I learned from 8 years of combat. You're not going over there unprepared. You know how to read terrain, how to spot threats, how to trust your instincts. You know how to watch your team's back and how to communicate under pressure. But what if I freeze up? What if when it matters I can't?" "Then you remember your training," Maya said firmly. "Your body will remember what your mind can't process, and you remember that you're not alone. You've got your team, your training, and you've got every lesson I've taught you." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're going to be fine, Jennings, more than fine. You're going to be a good soldier." Tears welled in the young man's eyes. "Thank you, Sergeant, for everything, for saving my life in the kill house, for teaching us, for showing us that heroes are real people who just keep going even when things are hard." After Jennings left, Maya sat back down at her desk and looked again at Sarah's photograph. Then she looked at the signed transfer orders, at the lesson plans spread across her desk, at the thank you note another recruit had left earlier that week. For the first time since Sarah's death, Maya felt something she'd thought was lost forever: purpose. The medals on her dress uniform, hanging in the closet, weren't just symbols of pain anymore. They were reminders of who she'd been in her darkest moments: someone who stood when others fell, who led when others couldn't, who fought when everything seemed lost. And now they were symbols of who she could be for others: a teacher, a mentor, a guide through the darkness she knew too well. Maya pulled out her journal and began writing, not about the past, but about the future, about lesson plans for advanced tactical training, about the soldiers she would prepare, about honoring Sarah's memory by ensuring that the next generation had every possible advantage. The pain would never completely go away. The nightmares would still come, but now they were balanced by something equally powerful: the knowledge that she was making a difference. Staff Sergeant Maya Chin had stopped running from her past. She'd learned to transform it into purpose. And in doing so, she'd finally found peace.